¿Usted puede asegurar que su dinero o nunca ha tenido vinculación con el narcotráfico?
Siempre he asegurado que mi dinero no tiene vínculos con el narcotráfico.
Known to the world as the king of cocaine, or El Patron, meaning the boss, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was the undisputed leader of the Medellin cartel. He was both feared and respected for his ruthless tactics and his army of sicarios.
The sicarios, the assassins. All of a sudden, here's Pablo Escobar, who has, we calculate, 500-600 sicarios working for him in the violence.
They were prepared to eliminate anyone who opposed him.
El destino me llevó a coger las armas al lado de Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria y ser un general de sus ejércitos, porque tengo lealtad y porque tengo cero ambición y porque tengo disciplina.
In today's episode, we will take a deeper look at the most horrific methods of torture by Pablo Escobar. Get ready for some freezingly cold stories and make yourself comfortable. Now, without further ado, let's hop right into it. John Jairo Velasquez, known infamously as Popeye, was a chief hitman for Pablo Escobar and was linked with some of the most brutal actions ever seen. His tactics were not just violent acts. They were meant to scare the shit out of people and make sure that members of the Medellin cartel stayed loyal.
Pues más o menos de mi propia mano unas 250 personas. Y tengo
de manera indirecta
unos 3,000.
His violent actions already began at the age of 18 years with his first murder.
Fue a un despachador de buses que cuando el primero era conductor de bus y había tumbado la mamá de un amigo nuestro cuando conducía. No esperó que se bajara y no que la señora se iba a bajar y se cayó y la mató. Y la dejó ahí tirada como un perro. Entonces ese fue mi primer asesinato.
Let's take a closer look at the terrible ways Velasquez and other hitmen operated, showing the harsh realities of organized crime, similar to what happens in Mexican cartels. Method number 1, el guiso, the stew. This practice of dissolving bodies in acid or other corrosive substances can be traced back to practices in various cultures where acid was used to destroy evidence. However, as a method of cartel enforcement, it likely developed as a practical solution to the problem of body disposal. Popeye's version of el guiso involved placing victims in oversized oil drums, which were then filled with flammable liquids and potent acids. This horrifying method was not solely about killing. It was about erasing existence, leaving no trace of the body. As the concoction dissolved everything organic, it symbolized the inevitable power of the cartel, a reminder that no one could escape its grasp. Velasquez ensured that this method was both feared and understood as a stark warning to those who dared to cross El Patron. Similarly, this method is also used by other cartels, among others the Sinaloa cartel, specifically by Santiago Mesa Lopez, nicknamed El Pozolero, the stew maker. He was a notorious figure associated with the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. He earned his ugly nickname by dissolving over 300 bodies in barrels of acid, a method that obliterated evidence of the cartel's enemies and their violent ends. Now let's quickly move on. Method number 2, dismemberment. Dismemberment has ancient roots and has been used as a form of capital punishment or war trophy display in many cultures throughout history. With cold precision, Velasquez used dismemberment as a visual spectacle of terror. He would methodically sever limbs and other body parts, sometimes while the victims were painfully aware and screaming.
Put my leg on a 2x4 and then they stitched it up.
This was not just an execution, but a public statement. Scattered remains served as a brutal testament to the fate awaiting traitors and enemies of El Patron. Did you know that this method was actually used by the Los Zetas cartel? They used this method back in time when it was possible to upload violent content on YouTube. Their videos managed to achieve views before they were manually taken down by YouTube for violating their terms of service. Sounds really horrifying to us. Method number 3, beheading by chainsaw. Beheading is a form of execution dating back thousands of years. But using a chainsaw is a modern, more sick twist, likely inspired by its efficiency and the terror it induces. This gruesome method was as much about the spectacle as it was about the act. Velasquez often chose to behead victims with a chainsaw, a process he sometimes recorded. These recordings were then distributed as a disturbing warning to anyone who might consider opposing El Patron. The loud, violent nature of the chainsaw beheading was intended to instill an unforgettable fear. This is not only a method used by cartels. Actually, Edmund Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer, an infamous American serial killer up through the 60s and 70s, also used this method to engage in horrific acts with his own mother's severed head.
As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy, literally. I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart.
Isn't that crazy? Well, let's get on with the next method. Method number 4, feeding to animals. El Patron and other big cartel profiles managed to maintain collections of exotic predators predators such as tigers, lions, cheetahs, etc. It was a way of showing power and dominance to his men and workers. Sometimes they were used to dispose of enemies. Velasquez would feed victims, alive or dead, to these beasts, turning human death into a show of dominance and cruelty.
They often torture and kill their victims. They have fed some of their victims, dead and alive, to tigers belonging to the Chapitos.
The practice of throwing individuals to beasts dates back to ancient times, such as the Roman use of lions in the Colosseum to execute prisoners. Again, El Patron wasn't the only man feeding people to his animals. According to the American authorities, on Iván Archibaldo's ranch in Sinaloa, the drug traffickers keep an unspecified number of tigers as pets. They occasionally feed them the bodies of their enemies, dead or alive. What do you think of this method? Is it the worst of them all? Drop a comment down below. Method number 5, skin flaying. Skin flaying is an ancient torture method used by various cultures for thousands of years, including by the Assyrians and the Aztecs. It became a regular aspect of Velasquez's repertoire, where he would rip or cut off the skin of his victims alive to prolong their agony. This method was reserved for those who had deeply betrayed El Patron, ensuring their end was as painful as possible. Other cartels, including the Sinaloa cartel, are making use of this method occasionally. In 2010, the Sinaloa cartel skinned the body of 36-year-old Hugo Hernandez and left it on the streets of Los Mochis in 7 pieces as a chilling threat to members of the Juarez drug cartel. They had even skinned the head of Hernandez and stitched it onto a soccer ball. A note read, "Happy New Year, because this will be your last." This is probably one of the most disturbing methods a cartel can make use of. Method number 6, psychological torture. Beyond physical violence, Velasquez employed psychological torture techniques, including prolonged isolation, exposure to horrifying stimuli, and mock executions. These methods were designed to break a person mentally and emotionally, ensuring total control over victims who have betrayed El Patron. Psychological torture techniques have been refined over centuries, with modern methods developed based on psychological research and warfare strategies. Hey you there! Yes, you! If you've watched so far, it must mean that you're finding value in our content. If you do, consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated with our latest uploads. Your support helps us keep creating content like this. Thank you for watching. Method number 7, public executions and displays of bodies are historical practices earlier used and especially originate from public executions in the Viking Age. Velasquez would also display offed bodies in public spaces, hanging them beneath bridges to assert dominance and control over territories. This method was a clear message to other cartels of the lethal consequences of crossing the mighty Pablo Escobar. Sometimes it would also be the main method used when El Patron ordered a hit on an opposing politician. Method number 8, waterboarding. Waterboarding has origins in the Spanish Inquisition. This torture technique is similar to the ones you've seen in movies, for instance in Prison Break. But here it was enhanced by Velasquez with the addition of substances like chili pepper to the water used. The modified waterboarding method not only simulated drowning, but also inflicted severe respiratory distress due to the hot chili peppers, which made the method even worse to endure. Honorable mention, cannibalism. In the most extreme cases, cartels are rumored to engage in acts of forced cannibalism. This would be a grim form of punishment that served to dehumanize their new prospects. This is a method used by the cartels to make sure that new members will go as far as eating their rivals' hearts and flesh straight from the bodies. This is probably the worst torturing method on the list, but wasn't employed by El Patron, as far as we know. It probably reminds you of the infamous and notorious serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, who brutally seduced his victims to his apartment, drugged them, and experimented with their bodies. This sometimes included cooking and eating their fresh hearts. Well, let's hop back onto the track. These methods employed by Velasquez under the command of Pablo Escobar were not profound, isolated acts of cruelty, but more used as strategic tools to maintain the cartel's power, control trafficking routes, and retaliate in extreme ways of violence against anyone who dared to oppose the mighty El Patron. Now, with these methods of in mind, which method do you think is the most brutal one? Comment down below. Thank you for watching all the way till the end. For more true crime, deep dives, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and click on the card shown on your screen right now.